Hey, have you ever made a D&D character that felt kind of flat and one-dimensional? Something that felt more like a collection of stats and abilities? I've got some ideas for making characters that you can really sink your teeth into. Let me be clear though, no matter what anyone says, there is no perfect formula for this stuff. Some things will work for some people, and other things won't. This isn't a step-by-step guide because there isn't really a correct way to do this. Instead, I'm just going to share some of my own philosophies and beliefs about character, in no particular order. Also, let me clarify something. This video isn't going to cover the mechanical aspects of a character like subclasses or feats. This is purely about, for lack of a better word, your character's character. With all of that being said, you always need an idea of a character. Big idea, little idea, doesn't matter. Think of something that interests you first and foremost. You could start with something as simple as, I want to make a character that dual-wields swords. Cool, we can work with that. Once you have the idea, even if it's just a little spark, one of the most important things you can do is to collaborate with your DM, and sometimes the other players, about how to make that character work. This game is all about collaboration. So, if the option is available to you, you should try to work with your DM to make the character really feel like they belong to and come from that world. Sometimes people get carried away with an idea that they're really excited about. They create a bunch of backstory and traits, but then it doesn't mesh well with the world or the story because they made all of it in isolation. Jake the dog from Adventure Time is a cool character, but if you try to put him into George R.R. Martin's Westeros, it just doesn't work. This is why it's so important to work with your DM. You both get to set expectations about what you want from the game. The DM presents the world to you, and should try to make a place for your character to fit. You create a character to inhabit that world, and should find a way to conform your idea to fit within the bounds of the world. Okay, so when it comes to D&D characters, there are two halves to this. The backstory, or the base, and then actually playing the character. There's a difference between creating an interesting backstory and playing an interesting character. In my opinion, the choices you make while playing the character are more important than the backstory. But that isn't to say that creating a good idea of a character isn't helpful. A strong, starting base will always be good to have, but this is one of those things where the execution of the idea is more important than the idea itself. You don't have to be a professional actor to play your character in an interesting way either. They can look, act, even sound like you. But what really matters is that you make choices that are consistent with that character. That doesn't mean that your character should always make the same choices every time, just that you need to be faithful to where that character's headspace is currently in the story. A character is a thing that makes choices. Choice is the ultimate thing that defines character. What have they done? What will they do? What will they not do? If you really want to embody that character, you need to be able to empathize with them. You don't necessarily have to sympathize or agree with what they've done or will do, but you need to be able to understand why they would do the things that they would do. Put yourself in their shoes and be honest about what they would do in that situation. Here's a quick exercise to get an idea of just who exactly your character is. Imagine somebody puts a gun to your character's head. What did they do? Try to reason with the gunman? Try to disarm them? Try and then fail to disarm them? Beg and plead for their life? Whatever the outcome is, a dire situation like that will show your character's true colors. Obviously, that's just one of thousands of ways to brainstorm a character. But I think something like that is especially useful for D&D because your characters are probably going to be in a lot of dangerous situations. On the flip side, you can also think of a more long-term approach. If your rogue used to steal from anyone and everyone, but then starts to see how their actions are affecting people who don't deserve it, then maybe, over time, you can make them start to only steal from other criminals, or whatever. That's character growth. Not all growth is positive though. If you envision your character slowly going down a dark path, then send them that way, as long as it doesn't inconvenience any of the other players. Not characters, but the players at the table, or the DM. Let's talk a little more about inconvenient characters. or rather, how to avoid that. We already covered working with the DM, but what about the other players at the table? You need to create a character that, at least on a meta level, is willing to go on adventures and cooperate with a party. It's one thing to have a reluctant hero who is forced, or chooses, to rise to the occasion and slowly become someone who puts themselves in harm's way, like Bilbo Baggins from The Hobbit. It's another thing to create a character who you, the player, literally just want to sit in the tavern and drink beer and refuse to go on adventures. If you want to do that, that's fine. Just go do it in some other solitary hobby. Everyone is at the table because they want to go on adventures, whatever that may entail. So if you show up with a character and you, the player, refuse to engage with the party or the encounters, you suck. Another thing that often inconveniences other players is the "it's what my character would do" thing. When everybody shows up to the table, there is usually an unspoken, or sometimes spoken, social contract of "don't be a dick." Now, every table's tolerance with this kind of stuff will be different, and that's fine. But I think most groups will share a common set of ground rules like don't steal from, or attack, or otherwise antagonize another party member unless you have a very good reason to. If your character wants to steal a cursed magic item from another party member because it's having a negative effect on them, sure, cool. We can work with that because the intentions are mostly justified. But if you're stealing the magic item because you want your character to have it instead of them, then you're just a thief. You know that phrase or idea of give someone a mask and they'll tell you the truth? Yeah. That can be very applicable to D&D because a lot of problem players will use the "it's what my character would do" to shift the blame from themselves to their characters every time they do something shitty. They use their character as an excuse to do shitty things, sometimes to other party members. Here's the thing. You made the character. You play the character. You have full responsibility of that character. If you make a character whose sole purpose is to be an asshole, then you are being an asshole. Obviously, some groups are going to be okay with that because, like I said, every table is different. Some people even like to run evil campaigns. That's perfectly fine, as long as everyone is aware of it and cool with it from the very start. This next advice is more suited for stories, but I think most of it can still work for D&D. So, a common idea when writing or telling a story is to explore the wants and needs of a character. These are usually two different things, and they will often, but not always, come into conflict with each other. A character's want is usually something they're aware of, some kind of goal or objective, something they want to have or do or accomplish. A character's need is something that they're not always aware of, but acts as a missing piece deep down inside of themselves. A lot of the time, this can be boiled down to want is an external desire and need is an internal desire. So how do we apply that to D&D? Well, it's a little tricky compared to finished stories because, unlike the writers of those, you don't have full control over this story. You might not be able to tie up a character's wants and needs in a satisfying or even thematic way. But that's alright, because at the end of the day, you're there to have fun, and this is just a bonus thing that you don't even have to do. Anyways, so essentially, you can use your character's wants as a driving goal, something that keeps them going, something they're going to work towards. Maybe some evil warlord came through their town and killed their family while they were out picking berries or something. Now, your character wants revenge. That's an external goal. For the need, you could design your character to, deep down in their soul, just need inner peace and maybe a close connection, like a family. So along their path to killing this warlord, maybe they encounter a group of fellow adventurers who, over time, develop a deep family-like bond. You can get however simplistic or complex as you want with that. And while it is optional, the reason I bring it up is because, as I said earlier, oftentimes in stories a character's wants will conflict with the character's needs. And at the end of the day, conflict is drama, and drama is interesting. If something happens and your character has to choose between staying with their newfound family or going after the warlord who killed their previous one, What will they do? That kind of thing also requires some assistance from the DM, which ties back into the importance of collaborating. You guys don't have to plot out the entire thing with a 3-act structure, but you can definitely have that discussion of, hey, I want my character to maybe have to face a problem like this. And then your DM can be like, okay, and then surprise you with it 30 sessions later. And also, don't create a want for your character that can be solved in like 2 sessions after starting. It needs to be something that can work long term so your character has time to grow and realize their need. Again, work with the DM on that. Create some wants and needs that are appropriate for the setting that you'll be playing in. Alright, some people may disagree with me on this, but here goes. If the most interesting thing about your character is their species or overall looks, that's a boring and shallow character. You're basically set dressing. Like Boba Fett from the original trilogy. What did he do in those movies? Appearances can be a contributing factor to a character's coolness. Don't get me wrong, but it can't be the only thing that's cool about the character. Appearances are like sprinkles on a cake. They don't really make the cake taste any better or add any substance, but it looks nice. Look, I get it. Tieflings are cool. Goliaths are cool. But if you can't make a human interesting, then you aren't trying hard enough. No, seriously, use that as a creative exercise. Take everything you've learned from this and other videos like it to create a human that makes you think, yeah, okay, I want to see more of what they do. So, that's all I've got for now. There's no right way to do this. There is no secret formula, and there will be exceptions to almost every rule. What works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. And that's okay, because the character that you made in your specific way might still be interesting to you and the people at your table because it's unique to you. Good luck.